Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you. Hope you don't mind my freaky hair. Having a bad hair day today. But today we're here. We're going to be discussing predictable income. Okay. And I know that is a funny catchword in the contracting world. All right. So hopefully we can work on some limiting beliefs today and come up with some solutions if you've experienced the revenue roller coaster. If you have a hard time predicting revenue, you would have a hard time obviously earning a consistent profit. And I can go through a whole story of what happens when we lose control of those things. So let's address it right head on, starting with the myth that's killing your business. Most contractors believe that seasonal slowdowns are inevitable. Okay. What if most successful contractors have already figured out how to generate predictable revenue 12 months a year? All right. While still hope, while others are still hoping that January picks up. All right. Now I'm going to give you my background for those that are new or maybe haven't been on our calls before. I own a fair-sized roofing company, and most roofing companies in our area, being in Canada and Ontario, they tend to slow down or shut down in December. All right. Now I learned this a couple, probably a decade ago, that when your competitors are going right, it's best that you go left. All right. So what happens is they tend to lay off all of their guys same time of year. All right. That happens to be the same time that I run a huge recruitment campaign and start to connect with all of their guys that have been laid off and start hiring their guys while they've decided to stop or slow down because January is slower. And that's not really good for business. All right. So laying off your best crew members every winter. All right. If you've experienced that. All right. Or scramble.
Ah,
Oh,
que está muy oscuro, mano.
oh, sorry. I didn't. Let's get
Y
there.
eso que es translucente.
All right. So laying off your best crew members for those guys that have had to do that in your slower seasons, not a really great idea. The general cost to hire a new employee nowadays is about 15 grand. When you add up all the time that gets invested into finding one single hire, you're in around that $15,000 range. So getting rid of guys or laying guys off at any point in the year, not a great thing to do. The other thing that I see a lot of is keeping guys on when we don't have enough to keep them busy. I've seen that a lot, and that can have even larger costs to it. All right. So the side effect that we see, and the one that I see probably the most, is when you can't plan for major family vacations or business investments or have any predictable income, that really does affect our overall lifestyle. And you're living in almost constant financial stress. I want to share a quick story with you guys about a contractor we worked with and still work with in Denver. He's a concrete guy and very much just like I'm explaining here, has experienced the ups and downs, the shoulder seasons. All right. We started working with him in 2022, this time of year. All right. And what he was experiencing at that point was a slowdown in the market, and his bank account essentially dropped from 47,000 to 3,200. All right. With a wife that was pregnant, bills piling up. All right. And we started working with him, and it got so bad at one point. I remember having a conversation with him that he was about to take a job at Home Depot. All right. That's how bad his experience was and just how bad the slowdown had begun. And where that came from is basically he was dependent on one major contractor, and that contractor actually went out of business, and he was forced to learn how to sell, learn how to remarket his business. But we did manage to get through it, and today he is in a far better place, doing about 2.5 million a year. And I want to kind of share some points of his story. So the big breakthrough with him was in particular breaking some old mindsets, right? Some old thinking, and where a lot of guys tend to be, all right, is stuck on the I need leads to make more money. Okay. I hear this day in and day out. And yes, leads are definitely essential to your business, all right? But we have to think about them a little bit differently. All right. So if we think of leads as just having more leads, making more money, you're essentially playing a lottery, right? It's random hope, let's call it. All right. What we really need, all right, and where the systemization of this comes into place, all right, is I need a revenue stacking system. I need something that triggers automatically. Okay. So again, this is something we have to think ahead of, right? Knowing when your shoulder seasons are is the first step in this process, right? To understand that in every business, we have natural ups and down sales cycles, all right? And they can be predicted and forecasted for. And the best way I can explain this to you guys is that anything we're going to be doing today, sales and marketing wise, maybe you're really busy today and we take our foot off the gas for even a minute in our marketing and sales, all right? Where you're going to see that impact occur is about 90 days from now, all right? So lo and behold, where are guys most busy? January, February, all right? Why is that? Because they stop marketing through September, October, November, right? That's usually what I'm seeing, right? They don't have a strategy to move customers into those slower parts of the season, and they're just not even aware that they follow a natural trend, okay? So we're going to talk more about that. You need basically to look at three revenue streams, okay? And for simplicity here, I'm going to explain it is the now money, all right? We've got 0 to 30 days that can convert. We've got the soon money, 31 to 90 days. And we've got the later money, 91 to 365 days, right? We need all three of those buckets, okay, to be working on at all points, right? We need to be working on filling those buckets at all points, all right? And I know it sounds a little more complicated than it actually is, but we're gonna figure this out and work through how we can build a predictable revenue stream. Okay? And again, I want you to think of your revenue like a vending machine. Okay? We can predict what we're getting, right? We can call our shots. We have perfect control. Okay? Unlike a slot machine, you put your money in, you never know what you're gonna get back. All right? So if you're playing the slot machine, all right, it's time to really start to change our mindset and start to really put a system in place to prevent this from happening. All right. Or you will constantly be in the feast or famine. And that's an unfortunate place to be. All right. So I'm going to try and make this simple. We're going to make it in 5 steps of the predictable income. First of all, we're going to map our money calendar. Okay. And in mapping our money calendar, we have to know a couple of things. Number one is what's the natural sales trend that we run? I'm going to be sharing with you a tool today that you can do that and actually forecast your sales. Okay. Really simple to fill out, really simple to understand. All right. But if we don't know what those shoulder seasons are, all right, it's very hard to navigate or to make any plans to prevent them from having impact on your business. All right. We need to build a service stack. Okay. So no matter what trade you're in, no matter what business that you're in, all right, stacking our offers or having additional offers that allow us to sell more consistently or sell more predictably is our first step or second step. All right. So this means that, hey, instead of pushing everybody and trying to do all of the work in a slower season, maybe we suggest to a customer a discount if they're willing to book their job in a later date, right? We should be looking at balancing out the revenue month to month and not trying to do all of it at once, all right, as it comes in. So again, these can be offers, these can be promotions that we can create if we're aware of where that's going to benefit us, right? So then we want to create your pipeline predictor, all right? So again, understanding where you need to fill in the gaps, all right? Understanding what the revenues are month to month, all right? And then we also want to launch our revenue insurance offers. So sometimes, again, guys, and it happens with us, it happens to the best of us, even though we take action and we set up campaigns, all right, we have a good marketing strategy, it still can end up where we have holes or gaps in our schedules, all right? We have to look at our whole entire offer and see how we can prevent that, how we can create insurance against that. All right. Maybe it's the type of customer you're working with. Maybe we need to diversify the customer base. Maybe we need to look at other services that we can offer. There's a slew of things that we can go through in order to come up with the best formula to prevent any slowdown or drops in or dramatic drops in revenue. Okay. And then we want to activate your slow season accelerator. And this is very simple. Again, like I said, this is coming up with an offer that moves people from one part of your season to the other. Okay. It can also be when you run certain ad campaigns or certain promotions that are going to help to fill in those revenue gaps. Okay. So what exactly am I talking about? And how do we have this as being predictable? So what we're looking at here, guys, is the outcome of running the sales forecast tool that I'll be sharing with everybody here. All right. And I want you to have a really good look at this. Okay. This is a typical contractor that we see. All right. So when we take their 3 years average sales per month and start to look at them visually and see, all right, what do you guys see? Sivash, what do you see here? Oh, you there? What's the story telling you?
Is that sales or is that
That's sales. That's revenue. Average revenue per month over a
that's
3 year period.
built
Yep.
volume or sold volume?
Sales. Yeah, just sales.
Yeah, so he sold a bunch, then he's like, how do I get this built? Took his
Right?
eyes off of it. That's actually
Right?
my trend.
Yeah, I know. It's everybody's trend. So what you see here, okay, is literally how people burn out. Okay. So slow, all of a sudden, again, we climb, we peak, crash, climb, we peak, crash. And this is again predictable. Now, had we moved some of this revenue to the following months, all right, you would prevent a lot of your burnout, a lot of the stress of some being over your capacity. But if we also knew ahead of time that, hey, January and February is always my slowest season, okay? March and April, okay? We can run campaigns starting in October, all right, to start to feed those months. Okay, you can run promotions because if we could get our top line figure, all right, to balance out with March and April, okay, those months aren't going to be as impactful, okay, or as negative as they have to be. Again, running 10.9% down to a quarter percent, that's going to create dramatic cash flow issues. That's going to create dramatic a million other issues. You're going to have to lay your guys off. And again, this is over a 3 year trend, right? So when you're looking at this, this is something that happened consistently over 3 years to get to this point. And I would say most companies in the trades, they are experiencing at least a form of this. Okay. And really what it is, it's your peak season. That's your bread and butter months, right? The highest demand, premium pricing power. So we need to be increasing our margins in those months as well. All right. Most guys keep their prices static. They keep their prices the same. You can't do that. You've got to raise your prices with demand. And if you're not, you're leaving a ton of money on the table, right? Our shoulder season, which is moderate demand, steady works available, you may have to lower back into a standard pricing model. All right. Maintenance and repairs may be something, again, that you take on more of. Okay. And then you have your valley season, which is traditionally slow, right? So minimum or neutral demand, opportunity for innovation, time to build for peak, right? So again, these are the times that people stop marketing. It blows my mind, but I see it all the time where they're in a low demand area, they panic and start cutting costs. And one of those costs always seems to be marketing, which is essentially cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? And really, it's predictable, right? So should we be moving not just work volume, but if we had demanded a higher price in these top end peak seasons, what we would be able to do is actually afford more marketing more consistently and fill out those gaps and voids in our schedules. Okay. Again, anybody that's worked with us knows that we don't believe in shutting marketing off. I think marketing needs to run 24/7, 365. Same with your recruitment. All right. That's a non-negotiable. That's something that everybody should always keep in mind. Again, we have two major resources we need to acquire as contractors. Okay. We need to have good quality manpower to get our work done, right? Whether that's sub or hourly guys, whatever you're using. All right. That requires these days a 24/7, 365 recruitment plan. All right. And you should be running those hand in hand and treating them the same as your marketing and sales, even if you don't need guys. All right. Because there's lots of times when you don't need work. All right. It's not the point. We have to think more than the immediate situation that we're in. Okay. We have to be able to see 3 months into the future, 90 days. Okay. We have to understand that this demand won't be there for that long, right? In every business, every single business, you name it, they have natural trends. And this is what you've got to be aware of. Okay. So in peak season, again, premium full service projects, complete renovations or installations, and high margins for specialty work. So here's the hopeful takeaway that we're going to get. Most companies do not change their pricing strategy based on their supply and demand. They're not even aware of it. So they're static pricing, same rates throughout the season. And when they do change their rates, it's not based on numbers and data. It's been based on how they're feeling. I think I'm really busy, so I'm going to raise my price. That's incorrect. Okay. We have to actually have a system that allows us to raise prices and lower prices based on facts and data. All right. Otherwise, the chances of you raising too late, all right, or raising too early, and again, lowering your revenues and lowering your profits is very high. Okay. So again, predictable, in control, planned. These are the ways that you want to run a business in the contracting world so that you're not leaving money on the table, all right, but you're not pushing away opportunity either. Okay. There's a good balance there. In the shoulder season, again, another opportunity. Do we take on more maintenance contracts, smaller repair jobs, quick turnaround projects for cash flow? Okay. So for all of you guys there that refuse to do service or don't take on service jobs or small projects, there's a good reason why a lot of companies that are in the top 10% of the market, top 10% contractors, have a very strong service department. I'll speak for that. The service department in our company is the profit center of our business. Okay. And when I'm saying profit center, what I mean by that is it's responsible for 40% of our major contracts. Okay. By being able to provide quick service, repairs, things like that, it actually brings in 40% of our major large projects for our clients. Okay. Second thing that it does, all right, is that it provides consistent cash flow. All right. These are things we're being paid for immediately. All right. And also maintains a 55% margin. Okay. So think about that for a second. You know, those repairs you're pushing away, though, like they carry a very high margin. Okay. And they can be very, very good and healthy for the business by filling in gaps in your schedule. Okay. So we've been very fortunate with a really strong service model. All right. But we base that as well on primarily our average ticket price is about 103,000. It's come down a little bit, but in past years, it's been about 103 grand for an average ticket. Okay. And we base these things again that we can maintain our guys, maintain our workforces. In the worst case, we can put them into service. All right. Sivash, you got a question?
What would be an example of a service contract for a decadent truck company?
Power washing. All right. So again, power washing is a great service. It's quick and easy. It's in high demand. Not a lot of people are willing to offer it. It can be considered maintenance for you guys, and everybody needs it. Right. So again, that's a great secondary offer to make. And it obviously leads to other things and leads to more lifetime value of a customer you've already acquired. Sealing, again, driveway sealing, anything that you can offer profitably, because again, a power washing, I think we work with a few power washing companies, one in particular in the past, Shiny Shack. They made a whole business model out of power washing, right? So again, that's what I would suggest for yours, just off the top of my head. And those guys are carrying like 70, 80% margin on their jobs. Same with window washing, stuff like that. Now, I'm not suggesting window washing is your route, but something along those lines, again, can make the shoulder seasons go by a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, anything that's quick turnaround, we're looking to make sure that we're keeping cash flow positive. All right. What I often see as well is that as your season or your peak season begins to slow down, all right, that's also where we run into those receivable issues, all right, delayed payments. Because if you're in a business, especially commercial stuff like that, your client or the person that you may be working for is also experiencing those slowdowns as well, right? So if you're, again, in the commercial contracting space, that's what I see a lot of. And again, it's very much predictable and preventable. Okay. So in step 3, we talked about pipeline predictor formula, right? So we track these 5 numbers. And again, in my dashboards, in everything I try to implement with my clients, we want to look at a couple of really important factors, right? So leads generated, okay, is going to be early indicator, leading indicator, and lagging indicator. All right. So your leads generated, your close rates, okay, and average job value. Okay. If we can get that, it equals predictable revenue. All right. So a great example of this is that if traditionally, again, in your peak season, you're generating 30 to 40 leads, all right, and in your valley season, you're only generating 15 leads, it might be a great idea to turn up the lead or your ad spend slightly during peak season to generate more to carry you through that next shoulder season and raise your marketing budget to accommodate for those other valley seasons. A lot of times we can solve the problem there. It's just a lever pull. All right. But we don't. We wait till it's too late and then face the consequences of that. Okay. We also want to track the number of estimates sent. All right. And days to cash. Okay. So again, finding jobs that have quicker turnarounds, right? For those valley seasons. That is a really important thing to do, making sure that you're filling your bucket with cash paying jobs, all right, to help take the burden of those slower times off your plate, right? So the magic formula, if you know these numbers, you can predict your income 90 days out with about 85% accuracy. Okay. So if you've ever stayed up at night worrying about where your next job was going to come from or how you were going to pay bills that month, all right, I want you to know one thing. That is a mistake that's avoidable. Okay, that's something you could have seen coming at least 90 days prior to that. Those are decisions that you made 90 days in the past that are affecting you now. Okay, that's not a now situation. Okay. And we have a lot of time to correct the ship and to really think about how we can prevent these things from happening. All right. Because again, this is what oftentimes forces you to play small, forces you to not be as confident in growing your business. All right. And which naturally leads to stagnation, in my opinion. Okay. So there's some couple of other things that I want to suggest. All right. Maintenance membership. So even Siavash for you, right? Running a maintenance membership, right? An end of season membership program where you're going to power wash the driveways or power wash whatever they have, and then having them sign up to a reoccurring revenue, right? Electricians do this a lot. Plumbers do this a lot, right? Having a club offer. Okay. There's a million other ways you can adapt this. We have a Christmas light offer, right? Lo and behold, when we are in January and February, what do you think my guys are doing? They don't love it, but they're taking down Christmas lights for those first slow seasons. So everyone I'm hiring in my recruitment that got laid off, all right, I've got ways to keep them busy, to keep them generating income, even if it's snowing, even if it's bad weather, which it traditionally is. All right. And these are maintenance agreements that we've had for years and years, right? So we cover their snow lights, we cover roof inspections, right? We install their Christmas lights, we take them down. Okay, so again, that's a way that I've been able to counter some of those slower peak season or valley seasons and fill it with cash paying work. Okay. Preseason booking discounts. Again, guys, let's be clever, right? If you know that somebody's not looking to get a project done 90 days out, all right, and you can put them into a slot where you're traditionally slow. So let's say if they're willing to book for the 1st of March, okay, we can make them an offer that makes sense for you both and to offset it. So again, a discount, and I'm using that just as an example, but you can offer someone a discount, and a lot of people will take you up on that. If their projects aren't completely urgent, to save 10%, do you think they would wait 90 days? Of course they will, right? To save 15%, that's worth it. But if we're not, again, aware that we have that problem coming, all right, very hard to make those offers. Okay. Partner referral systems. So team up with complementary trades. Okay. Mutual referral agreements. Again, start working on your marketing streams, and you'll find that you don't necessarily have any peaks and valleys in your revenues. Okay. So step 5, all right, the season campaigns, which I'm a big fan of. For my electricians, actually one that we were talking about this morning, running a fire alarm offer this time of year. Okay. Being that in October in BC, it's Fire Awareness Month. Okay. Can't time that any better. So why should we not be running a fire alarm protection system at that point? Right. So that's a good example, again, using your seasons, using your offers to start to fill in your gaps. Tax return, again, depending on what type of business you're in, payment plans available, special financing offers, bonus upgrades included, right? So there's a million ways that we can adjust and make it a win-win situation for ourselves and for our clients and start to fill in those gaps in our revenue stream, right? Preventative maintenance, the winter prep, weatherproofing services, indoor improvement projects, all of those things, okay? Here's another great idea, guys. Just reach back to all of your customers. And even if you guys have done business 2 or 3 years ago and run a referral package back to them, make them an offer. If they're willing to refer someone that you would possibly compensate them $200 or $300, whatever it may be that you can afford. And that's a great way, again, to use, not necessarily spend more on marketing, but to spend more on getting people to refer you more often. Okay? But again, with complete intention. All right, let's talk about my boy Mike. Again, I'm really proud of this guy. He's worked really hard. Went from in January 2023 with $3,200 in the bank and zero contracts. We implemented a couple of these objectives. All right. He started to do more maintenance as well, which was really a good move for him, and was able to get $2,400 a month in reoccurring revenue. For concrete, that's an unheard of, but we've successfully ran that whole program. We was able to get his pre-booked 84,000 fall and winter work. So again, by getting them to pre-book, even customers in the spring looking for a bit of a discount, we're happy to book their projects a little bit later. All right. And then in December 2023, the best December he ever had, he had 31,000 that particular month and was able to 31,000 was his gross profit, by the way, or his net profit, sorry. So it was one of his best months. I think he did just over 300,000 in rev. In January 2024, started the year with $287,000 fully contracted, and again had a complete predictable revenue. I'm again very proud to say that he's now operating at about a $2 million revenue, which is great for his business and where he came from. And he's successfully been able to bank about $300,000 a year in 2025. So again, big transformation, big change, and he's doing exactly what we're talking about: stacking offers, making things predictable, having the business finally operate without him having to babysit everything. And it again coming all the back down to how we see our revenue. Okay, so let's talk about some quick wins, guys. Want to make sure that I deliver some value for you guys. We want to pull the last 12 months in revenue. All right. We want to figure out what our peak seasons and valleys are. I have a sales forecasting tool I'm going to share with everybody where you can do this yourself. Again, a lot of it is just being aware of where those peaks and valleys are. Okay. The next quick win, call your last 10 customers. All right. Offer a preferred customer maintenance plan. If you're able to offer maintenance, all right, or a preferred or a referral bonus. That's another thing that you can offer to just about any clients. All right, just reaching back to them in general will get you great results. And text past customers planning 2025 schedule. Let them know that you'd lock in pricing. So anybody you have in your pipeline, anybody that may have been on the fence, all right, offer them a special discount for booking into 2025 and see what happens. Okay, so those three things that almost everybody could do on this call today that will most likely get you results. Okay, out of curiosity, what's the biggest income month versus the smallest income month that you guys have had? What's your number one obstacle to predictable income? All right, so I'm going to share with you guys my wildest swing in revenue, and I'll share with you really quickly how that came to be. I can remember in 2019, just as COVID was starting to take off there, we had done just over $1.8 million in revenue in the month of October. All right. As COVID came in and started to circulate, I think it was December when it hit, December or January when they started to do lockdowns. In the first lockdown month, we did 160 grand. So that put some pretty devastating effects on our business, but that was my biggest revenue swing. We've been able to straighten it out, but again, I don't think anyone was really prepared for what COVID brought. Anybody else have a obstacle to their predictable income? Want to share that with me in the chat? You guys are usually pretty quiet though. Did I see Mario come in here? I'm going to pick on him in for a second.
The biggest obstacle, I think, is tracking it.
Yeah, so it's not though. So again, that should be something that's on a dashboard, right? So like you can fully predict your revenue. Those are things that, like, again, as you get bigger in size, they're not novelties anymore. They're a requirement, right?
Yeah, of course.
So again, like I said, using the sales forecasting tool, like just tracking that revenue, like what you've got sold, and being conscious of it is going to make all the difference in the world. Because again, you're not going to march yourself right into a brick wall, right?
No.
Of course not. If you know it's coming, you've got 90 days to plan and prepare for it, chances are you're going to avoid that problem. But most contractors don't have a clue about it, and they just assume that's the way it is. They don't do anything to prevent it. They don't do anything to change course. And then they get hit right in the face with it and face the consequences. And what happens though is, like I said, it's a confidence killer, right? Now we're playing small. Now we're afraid to grow. Now we're cutting budgets. We're cutting costs. We're doing things that actually have negative effects. We're dropping our prices. That's another one I see just so regularly that you could be ahead of. So a good example is in roofing, and I'll use it as the example, is that I already know I don't want to really price anything in March. Do you know why? You know why we don't like pricing anything in March? We don't get excited about March at all. What do you think happens every year?
Taxes?
Every roofer wakes up from their hibernation, hungry, like looking for work, come out and they drop their numbers right off the bat to to get work in their pipeline. Now, what we've been doing for years is timing that, right? So we actually don't start really getting serious about everything until April. We will let those first, like we let them go in and fill their pipelines. We've stolen half their guys at that point. So they go to start up. We've got their guys with us. We've already hard sold starting in November, hard sold to move people in those places, giving them a 10% discount. So we don't have to compete with those guys dropping their prices 25 and 30%. We already locked customers in thinking they're getting a great deal, and I'm now using their guys to run those jobs. All right. So again, it becomes predictable. It becomes an actual weapon. Like I'm using their own stupidity against them. In that they, like, we know, and we're not going to play that game. So we qualify really hard in March, because if they're getting prices that are half the price of ours, it's pretty hard to compete with that, right? So we don't. We let them fill their boots full of unprofitable work, and then when they figure out they don't have the manpower to do that work, they slow down. It's so predictable. Then they slow down. And by April, we're pulling those contracts back from them most of the time. So again, it's just about how you're seeing that situation, right? Data does make a big difference here. So Mario, I was going to bring up your recent new venture with closets, right? How does that play into what we're talking about here? What does that do for you?
In terms of revenue, or I'm not
Yeah.
sure what you're
Yeah,
asking.
so like the diversification. So like again, you primarily do big kitchen projects, right? Long-term commercial projects and stuff like that. So in all that, do you run into situations with scheduling?
All the time, yeah.
Do we run into situations with cash flow?
It's getting better.
Yeah. But again, now if we have a whole other line of smaller projects that pay quicker, all right, we're able to fill in any gaps that you have. So the best way I can explain this is we're going to take a bottle, all right, a jug, all right? We're going to fill the jug first with all of the big rocks that we have. Okay? That's going to be your commercial projects. That's going to be the things that are your primary jobs from your peak season, all right? Second, we're going to fill the jug with medium rocks, right? Again, think of your shoulder season, right? So in your medium rocks, your maintenance contracts, your smaller projects, your closets, stuff like that, right? And then on top of that, we're going to fill the whole thing with sand. And again, this is what I mean when we're looking at our revenue in ways that we can build a really solid, consistent revenue stream, all right? It works out. Okay. What happens though, if we're only closed-minded, we're not watching our numbers, we don't know where those seasons are, it's very difficult to plan. It's very difficult to understand why would I run an offer where I'm going to reduce my price 10%. All right, which isn't normally what I recommend, but again, does it make sense in the context of if you sold into the time when everyone's going to be dropping their price 30 to 40% to stay competitive, you've already pre-sold that season out, right? Again, just knowing your markets, knowing those trends is how you get to that point. Okay? Let's build a predictable revenue system. Number one, a revenue audit. If you want, if you comment audit, we will get you the sales forecasting tool. All right. You can fully audit your own revenue. All right. And start making plans for your shoulder seasons, your off seasons. Again, really quick to do. You just take your revenue numbers the last 3 years, break them down by the month. And that's going to give you not only a forecast of which months you can grow in and which months typically are growth months, but it'll also allow you to put a new revenue in as well and keep you accountable to hitting that target. All right. So it's a tool I still use in my own business. Simple, easy. I use it with all of our clients as well. So again, I encourage you to grab that from us. Also, you have an option here. You can book a strategy call with us and we'll take a look at it together, come up with a game plan, no obligation, of course. And the last one is we had a 5-day challenge a little while ago. I'd love to give away to everybody for free. That goes through exactly this. So if you're struggling with your marketing, we have a 5-day challenge that will help you to come up with your best offer and be able to solve some of these revenue problems you have and have a predictable income system. All right. A couple of other suggestions just in terms of trades. I'm not sure who I've got on here, so I don't want to lose anybody on that I didn't speak directly to them. So remodelers, a great time is tax season for targeting tax returns, seasonal offers, design consultations. Even I've seen some remodelers successfully offer handyman services. Okay. Usually they scoff at that, but handyman services can always lead to larger projects and it definitely does help with revenue and cash flow. All right. Roofers, inspections, gutter cleaning, attic insulation, energy and repair contracts, again for those off seasons. HVAC transitioning, AC heating with maintenance. So selling the memberships, great for business, especially if you can schedule them in the off season. All right, landscapers, snow removal, holiday lighting, early bird pricing for next season. Okay. Anybody individually have a struggling to see what they could offer? Love to brainstorm with you. If you have any trade, any business that you're in where you're struggling to see what you could offer, you can unmute yourself and we can discuss it.
I've got a couple of things that I want to put up there,
Yeah, sure.
like a ready to assemble nightstand with what is it called? It's not upcycled material.
Okay. Right on. So almost like a retail sale, so somebody would buy those like almost from a store.
Yeah,
Okay. So almost in like a furniture making capacity.
yeah, and it's basically a better version of IKEA, but they could assemble it themselves. And there's different configurations depending on what kind of
Very cool.
materials we got left over.
That's brilliant. So again, and you could probably use a lot of your scrap or not scrap, but your leftover materials, you said?
Yeah, I usually end up with 1 or 2 sheets extra per project, and because some of them are super custom, I don't know, like it's just filling up my shop, or I have
Yep.
to pay to get rid of it. So I want to make something with it.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's a great idea. And again, you can definitely almost find a whole other business revenue stream that way.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would definitely, I'm pretty close to, we have one design ready to go, and we should talk about putting some options onto like an online store.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that a few times. I'm all game for that. Even selling those to distributors and stuff like that's probably your best way to unload that.
The other thing I've looked at, my local Rona here sells like shelves,
Yep.
just 5/8 thick, and
Mhm.
they're edged on 4 sides. And that's just also a byproduct of what I could use leftovers for.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. We do something similar with all of our metal panels because we like overrun them and have a ton left over. We sell them to a company that makes sheds. a big company here that makes sheds. We do the same thing. So yeah, whenever you can reduce waste and generate a revenue out of it, that's always key, right?
And who knows if it takes off and is in more demand, I'll just get more material.
Yep. Yeah, again, in terms of finding maintenance service and stuff as well. So I can definitely tell you from the days when I would scoff and wouldn't do little projects and wouldn't do little service calls, I had to really work hard to shift my mindset to being able to off service. And once I leaned into it, I realized how lucrative it is, right? Because it's the things that nobody wants to do. And once you build a company around service, lots of improvements came, especially with keeping our subcontractors honest on our bigger jobs, like having that ability to service your customer, be able to respond within 24 hours to any call, like just such an unfair advantage over everybody else. And then the maintenance contracts is really where we found the success because we could book those in basically in between emergency calls and stuff, and our customers love it. It keeps us in touch with them for decades, right? And there's always more work that they have or that comes up. And a great way to retain the relationship. They're profitable. So anybody that's got an opportunity for a service model, I totally encourage you to do that.
I would love to have a car company to do that with our company vehicles. The service, they come get the vehicle, change the tires, do an oil
Yep,
change and whatnot. Here's a flat
totally.
rate fee, like just you do it. I don't want to care
Right.
about that. But
And the same, again, we're going more and more towards, we have been for a long time, is everyone wants the Amazon experience. So, like, how many of you guys have moved from buying at a shopping mall to completely buying everything online?
why would you bother go to the shopping mall?
All right.
It
So
takes
now
you
think of your,
hours to
right.
find anything.
Now think of your business the same way, right? How do you make it fast and convenient for someone to engage with you? All right. And especially on lower ticket compulsive buys, right? You know how easy it is to, sell somebody a service, a long-term service contract if they save 10% on their price today. Very easy, right? You know what? Now you've actually got an asset that you're building inside of your business. And most guys, again, don't realize this, that if you were to try and sell your business, okay, most of companies that are going to get put up aren't worth a dime. And it's not that you didn't make money and they're not profitable. It's got nothing really to do with that. It's if you're going to be bought by venture capital or anybody that come in, what do you think they're buying? If you don't have any reoccurring revenue that you can offer them, all right, it drops your value dramatically, right? So for us, we looked at if we could generate $1 million worth of reoccurring revenue, we would get a 4-time buyout for that, right? So 4 times rev would be our buyout on that. Now, just having a $12 million roofing company on its own might be worth $1 million. Think about that for a second. I'm doing $1 million and getting $4 million back in basic value and leverage. All right. Or I'm doing $12 million and I'd be lucky I'd fight to get $1 million back from it. So again, anything that's reoccurring is going to put an asset in your company. That's why a lot of electricians do their maintenance programs for $19, $20. And what's that do? It keeps your customer base coming back, right? Because they're a member. Okay, so again, lots of ways that we can think about this problem and solve it. Anybody have any questions? Anything that they want to add to this conversation? Okay. All right, I'll assume that everyone's questions are answered then. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me on my call. We'll talk soon.